Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. What's on a classified video that made Sean Diddy Combs break down in open court? Why did a high-ranking Homeland Security agent suddenly appear as a surprise witness with evidence so sensitive that armed federal officers now surround the courthouse? And what ritual practices were allegedly captured on this recording that caused 3 jurors to request counseling after viewing it in chambers in a federal courtroom where Sean Diddy Combs faces grave accusations? An unprecedented scene unfolded today when Special Agent Marcus Daniels of Homeland Security's Trafficking and Criminal Enterprise Division took the stand, revealing the existence of video evidence previously unknown to the defense. This wasn't just another witness. This was a federal agent with Level 8 security clearance, bringing materials so sensitive that the judge initially ordered all electronic devices removed from the courtroom before testimony could proceed. Daniels described the origins of this video, reportedly discovered during a raid on an offshore data center linked to Diddy's business associate. The normally composed music mogul visibly crumbled for the first time since his arrest. Diddy's carefully maintained facade shattered completely. He lunged toward the agent, his voice breaking as he pleaded, "You can't show that, please. That wasn't meant to be recorded." The outburst prompted immediate intervention from court security, but what happened next shocked even veteran court reporters, the judge interrupting both the proceedings and Diddy's desperate pleas announcement. This court will view the evidence in question privately before determining its admissibility. What I've been told about its contents suggests extraordinary measures may be necessary. But what exactly was captured in this recording that could make one of the most powerful figures in entertainment break down in desperate pleading? Why was it classified under national security protocols rather than standard evidence procedures? And what did Agent Daniels mean when he referred to it as evidence of ritualistic practices inconsistent with any recognized religious or cultural tradition? This isn't just another celebrity trial revelation. It's a moment that could expose practices so disturbing that federal authorities are treating it as a matter of national security. The full story, raw and unfiltered, begins with a data center raid in the Cayman Islands and leads to evidence that may forever change our understanding of power, influence, and what some people will do to maintain both. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to stay updated on the latest developments in this unprecedented case. I'm standing outside the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, where an extraordinary security presence has transformed the normally bustling legal complex into what resembles a military checkpoint. Homeland Security vehicles line the perimeter, and agents with tactical gear are positioned at every entrance. Court officers are conducting enhanced screenings, including electronic device sweeps that go far beyond normal security protocols. Inside, the atmosphere in courtroom 24 be shifted dramatically this morning. What began as a routine day in the ongoing trial of Sean Diddy Combs changed the moment U.S. Attorney Elena Morales announced a surprise witness the government calls Special Agent Marcus Daniels' Department of Homeland Security. The gallery erupted in whispers. Diddy, who had appeared relatively composed throughout the proceedings, visibly tense at the announcement. His lead attorney immediately requested a sidebar, which the judge granted. After 5 minutes of heated discussion, court resumed with the judge making an unusual announcement. Due to the sensitive nature of this testimony, all electronic devices must be surrendered before Agent Daniels takes a stand. Judge William Harrison stated, "Court officers will collect these items and return them at the conclusion of today's session." This unprecedented security measure set the tone for what was to follow as court officers collected phones and other devices. Armed federal agents positioned themselves near the exits. The level of security suggested something far beyond typical evidence in a criminal proceeding, even one involving a high-profile defendant. Agent Daniels entered not through the standard witness door, but through a side entrance accompanied by two additional agents carrying a secure briefcase handcuffed to one of their wrists tall with a military bearing and a composed demeanor of someone accustomed to high-pressure situations. Daniels was sworn in with the credentials presented directly to the judge rather than read aloud for the record. Another unusual procedure. Diddy leaned forward, studying the agent within intensity that didn't escape notice. His attorneys appeared equally concerned, exchanging glances and notes as Daniels took the stand. In the gallery, now devoid of the usual tapping of reporters on devices, sat in unusual silence, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Special Agent Daniels, the prosecutor, began. Can you please explain your role in the investigation of the defendant, Sean Combs? I lead the Special Acquisitions Team within Homeland Security's Trafficking and Criminal Enterprise Division. Daniels replied, his voice measured and authoritative. My unit became involved following the discovery of certain digital materials during a multi-agency operation in the Cayman Islands in February of this year. The prosecutor nodded. And what was discovered during this operation that connected to the current case during the execution of a warrant on a data center allegedly used by several criminal enterprises for secure storage? We discovered a partition server registered to a shell company later traced to one of Mr. Combs' business associates. This server contained encrypted files that, once decrypted, revealed video footage of extreme concern to national security. It was at this point that Diddy's composure began to visibly crack. His attorney placed a restraining hand on his arm, but the music mogul's eyes remained fixed on Agent Daniels with an expression that combined fear and disbelief. The judge, noting Diddy's reaction, paused the proceedings to remind everyone about proper courtroom behavior. This brief interruption only heightened the tension as Agent Daniel prepared to describe exactly what had been discovered on that encrypted server. To understand the significance of what we discovered, Agent Daniels continued after the judge's reminder, I need to provide some context about our ongoing investigations. He explained that Homeland Security had been tracking unusual patterns of private air travel and security-conscious communications among certain entertainment industry elites since 2019. These patterns initially appear consistent with high-level drug trafficking operations, but as the investigation deepened, agents began to suspect something potentially more concerning. We identified a recurring event, Daniels testified, taking place approximately 4 times annually at rotating private properties. These gatherings involved extensive security measures, including signal jamming equipment, counter-surveillance protocols, and vetting procedures that exceeded what we typically see even in organized crime operations. The prosecutor approached with a document. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Government Exhibit 247, a timeline of these gatherings with corresponding travel records. As the timeline was displayed, it revealed a pattern spanning 7 years, private flights to remote locations worldwide, always with the same core group of 12-15 individuals and rotating guests who often appear to be young aspiring artists or models. Mr. Combs appears as a participant in 26 of the 28 documented gatherings. Agent Daniels noted, based on electronic communications we recovered, he appears to have been one of the principal organizers. Diddy's attorney objected, arguing that attending private gatherings wasn't illegal and that the government was attempting to create sinister implications around normal celebrity behavior. The judge overruled, but cautioned the prosecution to establish relevance quickly. Agent Daniels then described how the investigation escalated in January 2025 when a confidential informant, someone who had allegedly attended one of these gatherings, came forward with information that transformed the nature of the investigation. Based on this informant statement, we modified our approach. Daniels testified what had begun as a potential trafficking investigation now included elements that triggered national security protocols under Executive Order 13873 regarding threats to critical infrastructure and key population segments. This vague but ominous statement caused murmurs in the courtroom. The judge gave for silence as the prosecutor continued. Agent Daniels, what specifically did you discover on the encrypted server that connects to this case? The server contained multiple video files documenting what can only be described as ritual gatherings. Daniels replied, his professional demeanor never wavering despite the disturbing content. He described these weren't religious ceremonies in any recognized tradition. They involved participants, including Mr. Combs, engaging in behavior that appeared designed to induce extreme psychological states in selected attendees. The agent explained that the videos showed a progression. What began as seemingly benign meditation or breathing exercises would gradually transform into something far more concerning, with participants being guided through experiences that appeared designed to break down psychological resistance and create intense emotional dependency. What makes these videos particularly relevant, Daniels continued, is that several individuals who appear in them subsequently signed contracts with Mr. Combs' business entities under terms that are financial. Analysts have flagged as extraordinarily exploitative. At this point, Diddy whispered urgently to his attorney, who requested a brief recess. The judge denied the request, instructing the prosecutor to continue. Agent Daniels, does the government possess video evidence that directly implicates the defendant in illegal activities during these gatherings? Daniels nodded solemnly. Yes, among the recovered files is a 72 INI, said the 2-minute video dated September 14th, 2023, filmed at a private compound in Morocco. This video shows Mr. Combs not merely participating in, but directing activities that in the assessment of our behavioral analysts constitute a sophisticated form of psychological conditioning consistent with known control techniques. The agent then described how the video had been discovered hidden behind multiple layers of encryption on a server specifically designed to be untraceable. The extraordinary measures taken to conceal this content suggested awareness of its problematic nature. In my 15 years with Homeland Security, Daniels concluded, I have never encountered material that so clearly documents a systematic approach to psychological manipulation for purposes of exploitation. This isn't speculative. The video shows the process from beginning to end, with Mr. Combs clearly identifiable as the primary facilitator. As his testimony continued, Diddy's expression had transformed from concern to something approaching panic. The implications were clear. The government wasn't just presenting isolated allegations, but evidence of a long-running, carefully concealed operation with him. At its center, the government requests permission to play a brief redacted segment of the video recovered from the Cayman Islands server. The prosecutor announced, prompting immediate objection from Diddy's defense team. Your Honor, we have had no opportunity to review this alleged evidence. His attorney protested, this ambush violates my client's right to due process. The judge considered briefly before responding. The court will first review the material in chambers with one representative from each legal team present. The jury will be excused during this review. As the jury was let out, an extraordinary scene unfolded. Federal agents wheeled in a standalone viewing system, a secure non-network device specifically designed for classified material. This wasn't standard procedure for criminal evidence. It was a kind of protocol reserved for national security matters. For the record, the judge announced, this review will determine not only admissibility, but also what security protocols must be implemented should the court deem this evidence appropriate for presentation. Diddy, suddenly realizing what was about to happen, lost his composure entirely. He stood abruptly, addressing the agent directly. You can't show that, he said, his voice breaking the formal silence of the courtroom. Please, that wasn't meant to be recorded. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Court officers moved toward him immediately, but Diddy continued, his words tumbling out with increasing desperation. Those ceremonies are private. They're protected. You're violating sacred traditions that go back generations. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Combs, control yourself, or you will be removed from this courtroom. Diddy's attorney pulled him back into his seat, whispering urgently, but the damage was done. His outburst, acknowledging the existence of the very ceremonies he had previously denied knowledge of, had been heard by everyone present. The judge, prosecutors, and representatives from both legal teams withdrew to chambers, leaving Diddy sitting with his remaining attorneys, visibly shaking. The gallery remained silent. The usual whispered commentary absent as the gravity of the moment settled over the courtroom. 43 minutes later, the judge returned alone, his expression grave. Rather than immediately calling the jury back, he addressed court directly. Having reviewed a portion of the submitted evidence, this court makes the following determination: the material in question contains content of such a sensitive nature that extraordinary measures are required. He outlined an unprecedented set of restrictions. The courtroom would be closed to all but essential personnel during. Confidence completely evaporated. The prosecution team appeared somber, while federal agents had taken positions around the perimeter of the room. The court will now hear testimony regarding Government Exhibit 301. The judge announced. Before the agent continues, I must instruct everyone present that what you are about to hear falls under gag order previously mentioned. Agent Daniels returned to the stand and with careful clinical precision began to describe the contents of the video, without actually showing it. A bizarre compromise that only heightened the ominous nature of the evidence. The video begins in what appears to be a ceremonial space. Daniels testified 12 individuals, including Mr. Combs, are seated in a circular formation. The room contains symbols that our analysts have identified as combining elements from various esoteric traditions, though arranged in a configuration not consistent with any recognized practice. He described how participants initially clothed in white garments engaged in breathing exercises led by Diddy, who could be heard instructing them to open themselves to the current and prepare to receive guidance from beyond the veil. Approximately 17 minutes into the recording, Daniels continued. Mr. Combs introduces what he refers to as the chosen vessels, 3 individuals who appeared disoriented, possibly due to substances administered before the recording began. It was at this point that Diddy made a second, more desperate attempt to interrupt, rising from his seat despite his attorney's restraining hand. "Stop this," he shouted. "You have no right. You don't understand what we're doing. It's for elevation, for ascension. These are sacred practices." The judge immediately called for order. "Mr. Combs, this is your final warning. One more outburst, and you will be removed from this courtroom." As court officers again surrounded Diddy, forcing him back into his seat, Agent Daniels continued his testimony, describing how the video showed a progression from ceremonial activities to what he termed systematic psychological deconstruction of the chosen vessels. The clinical language couldn't fully sanitize the disturbing nature of what the video apparently contained. Several jurors visibly recoiled as Daniels described techniques that combined sensory manipulation, substance administration, sleep deprivation, and psychological pressure applied over the course of several hours. The video concludes. Daniels testified with Mr. Combs, instructing the primary participants to seal the covenant with the now completely compliant vessels. The final segments show the signing of documents later identified as exclusive contracts with Mr. Combs' various business entities. As his testimony concluded, the courtroom remained in stunned silence. The methodical description had painted a picture not of spontaneous criminality, but of a carefully developed system, one apparently designed to create psychological dependency and compliance in victims, who would then be bound by seemingly legitimate business arrangements. The prosecutor asked one final question. "Agent Daniels, in your professional assessment, what was the purpose of the activities documented in this video?" Daniels looked directly at Diddy as he answered to create leverage, psychological, emotional, and ultimately legal, over individuals with potential commercial value in the entertainment industry. My experience investigating human trafficking and exploitation, this represents one of the most sophisticated systems of coercion I have ever encountered. Following a brief recess, the prosecution moved to establish that the video wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a pattern spanning years. Agent Daniels returned to the stand, accompanied by Dr. Rebecca Chin, a forensic psychologist specializing in coercive control and exploitation. Agent Daniels, the prosecutor, began. "How many similar videos were recovered from the encrypted server?" 23 distinct recordings, Daniels replied, dating from August 2017 to December 2020. For they show a clear evolution of techniques becoming increasingly sophisticated over time. The agent explained that the videos documented a refined system that had been perfected through repetition. Early recordings showed less structured activities with inconsistent results. Later videos, including the one from Morocco, demonstrated a highly developed methodology that appeared designed to maximize psychological impact on targeted individuals. Dr. Chin then provided expert context, explaining the psychological mechanisms being exploited in these recordings without describing specific content that would violate the judge's gag order. She outlined how the techniques visible in the videos combined elements of sensory overload, trauma bonding, dissociative induction, and manipulated group dynamics. What makes this system particularly effective, Dr. Chin testified, is its gradual progression. Targets aren't simply abducted or overtly coerced. They're led through a series of escalating experiences, each one making the next seem more acceptable. It's a form of psychological boiling of the frog. Subjects don't realize how deeply they're being manipulated until they're already significantly compromised. The prosecution then presented financial records showing how individuals identified in the videos subsequently signed contracts with Diddy's various business entities, contracts that legal experts had analyzed and found to be extraordinarily one-sided. The financial records tell a clear story, Agent Daniels explained. Individuals who appear in these videos As chosen vessels inevitably sign contracts within 30 days of the recorded ceremonies, these contracts typically granted Mr. Combs' organizations between 80-95% of all future earnings control over creative output and extensive rights to the individual's image. And likeness more disturbing was evidence showing how these same individuals often exhibited dramatic personality changes after their participation in these events. Social media posts, interviews, and statements from friends and family documented concerning transformations from independent, ambitious artists to compliant, seemingly dependent individuals whose public statements often echoed phrases directly attributable to Diddy the prosecution, then connected these psychological operations to physical control mechanisms, travel record security logs, and electronic monitoring evidence, suggested that many of these individuals were subsequently kept under close surveillance, their movements and communications carefully tracked and often restricted. What we're seeing, Agent Daniels testified, isn't just psychological manipulation. For a single contractual event, it's the creation of ongoing control relationships that in many cases meet the technical definition of human trafficking under federal statutes, specifically the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain labor or services.